You never know. I always say, whenever you're getting on Zoom, you never know what's going to happen. It's always really a live show. So, um, um, our so I've got buzzes flying in the background, and folks, this is what happens um, when you do the tech and the introductions yourself. Amanda is having a little trouble logging on, but thank you. We are beginning one of the I think funnest presentations that you can have on the topic of finances, personal finances, taxes, tax mistakes. Um, we're starting with a meditative piece to focus our energy and attention, and ending with a jig. It is, after all, St. Patrick's Day. So thanks for attending. I have to send this one more time out to Amanda. I will run through the program, what to expect today in full, to give a little understanding of what we're doing, and then we'll get started. So with that, let me share this up again. And so this is our agenda for today. We have a fantastic panel of presenters, of speakers. This band, Once Upon a Tune, will carry us out. And Amanda will bring us in. Kathy Schwartz, who's on the screen now with me, will take us through some common tax errors to avoid. Hey, Amanda. And then Ashley Elise from Blue Credit Union, will talk about the principles of preserving wealth. How do we, once we've stopped making mistakes, how do we preserve wealth? And then Bo Smith from Edward Jones will then take us through the next step. Now that we've stopped making mistakes, now that we've accrued some wealth, preserved some of that, what do we do next? What is the legacy piece of that after we're gone? So after we've gone from making mistakes to accrual to looking forward into the future, what a better thing to do, particularly on St. Patrick's Day, than to listen to, maybe get up and dance a jig. So we bring in the spirit, the mind, and the body all at the same time. So thank you for that. We're always mindful of time. Nobody likes to sit on Zoom for hours and hours and hours. So we're just going to jump right in. And I'm going to stop sharing this and introduce Amanda real quickly. Some of you folks know Amanda. She has actually worked for a little help as a staff person for years, really. And about a year ago, was really called off to start her own business of Reiki and meditation and mindfulness. So Amanda, I said I'm going to try to keep it brief. You can fill in a little bit more about yourself even than I can, and would you focus us and bring us in the direction to have these conversations?
Yes. Thank you, Jason. And just so you know, I like to keep you on the toes. That's why I arrived just on time. So thanks for having me though today. So as Jason said, I'm Amanda Gregg. I did work for a little help for the last 3 years, and then moved towards building a business and really bringing mindfulness, movement, and energy all together. And so with this process, just been able to come together, do this in one-on-one settings. So I help people in that way be able to bring this movement and this mindfulness into their everyday. And then I also do group classes that have been through DU so far, and just been connecting with that. So it's been a really, really cool place. So today I'm really excited to be a part of this program. Jason asked me to do this a little while ago. And for me, what I want to say about this, that is kind of a piece that I just felt called to say today, is money is energy, right? And when you think about what money has meant for you, like historically, some things that you've attached to how you interact with money, when we can come back to this idea that money is energy, and as it comes in, it also flows out, and there's different ways that we can look at how we save that or how we move that in the economy. It's a really, really awesome way to do that. somebody yesterday said this to me, which I thought was very timely, so I could share it with you today, is also when you're moving that money around, you're actually building velocity within that money to keep creating and keep moving around basically the world. So with that, I will do some of our exercises, which I believe will get you into this space of being able to come from a place of connection with your mind and body, and also your energy as you think about this subject. So we could be really in our mind thinking about, well, here's what I think, and those type of things. And when we can really open up, and all the wonderful presenters that you're going to hear today, I think are going to just open this space as well for you to think about things a little bit differently and get out of that maybe way that you've always thought about it. So with that, if you'll just close your eyes with me, bring yourself into this space of just breathing in and out, allowing yourself just to let go of some of those thoughts, just bringing yourself down into your body and really connecting with your intention. What is your intention for being on this call today? Is there a specific question that you want answered? Do you just want to open yourself to other information that's maybe new, or you're listening to it in a different way? So just breathe here for just a moment. And a lot of times where our money issues lie is actually in our shoulder space and in our back. So our back is really trying to hold us up in this place of money and the structure that's created around us. So I want us to relax out of that and just be able to open that up a little bit. So we're going to start with just a roll of our neck. So just going in one direction, trying to keep your eyes closed if you're comfortable. If you're not, that's totally fine too. You can open them up, just breathing into that. And then our next one, just going in the opposite direction, allowing yourself to really feel into those shoulders. That's where we can start to really hold some of our money tension, money issues, money worries. So in the next revolution, just stopping for a moment, breathing into that. Let's just take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. And then our last movement that we'll do before you come back together and really open yourself to what these presenters have to say today is we're going to roll our shoulders up and back. So rolling those shoulders up and back, allowing again for the shoulder area, anything, any tension that you're holding, just allowing it to really roll out of there. Feeling your whole entire back and torso as well. And then we're going to go forward with that movement. So forward with those shoulder rolls. Just being able to bring that in. All right, and then on the next circle, we're just going to, again, just come back to center. And I want you to notice as we open our eyes up here in a moment and get on with the presentation and the other presenters, I want you to notice how you're holding your body. So are you shifted forward a little bit towards your computer screen? Are you leaning way back? I just invite you to find a little bit of a micro movement. Maybe your neck just shifts back a little bit so that it feels like it's floating on your neck, on your shoulders. And then same for your torso. Is there any micro movement you can make just to open that space up? Feel like it's just floating on your hips. So just noticing that, trying to keep your eyes closed, allowing anything that you're viewing just to not be in the picture right now. And then we're going to open our eyes. We're going to take a nice deep breath. Any sort of stretches that you need, shaking out that energy. And then what I just want to say in closing is these movements are really simple, but you can do them at any point in your day. And it could be in these moments when maybe you feel worried or anxious or anything that's having and going on with the things that you're doing. And being able, again, to make those shifts in your body, just to see. Sometimes if we're looking in the future, we're moving forward. if we're really pulled back in the past, we may be sitting back a lot. So just finding that center for you where you really feel that balance between the future, the past, and just sitting right here in the now. So I hope that helps you be centered as you continue this conversation today.
Thank you, Amanda. I do like those little moments when you can take those moments and just be mindful of where you are physically. And it changes everything. So now that we're all relaxed, I'd like to start by introducing the first person who's going to speak today. Is Kathy Schwartz, who is a financial advisor at Waddell and Reed. And Kathy can come on up on the screen and maybe give a little more introduction, Kathy, of what you do and what your background is. And Kathy's going to talk to us about some common mistakes at this time of year. Not necessarily common mistakes that happen on St. Patty's Day. We could kind of know what those might be. But in this tax season, as we're getting ready for this new season. So Kathy, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for helping to put this whole program together. I really appreciate everything that you've done with this.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate you inviting me to participate. So yeah, my name is Kathy Schwartz, and I'm a certified financial planner with Waddell and Reed. And I'm just going to share a few tips on tax mistakes to avoid. Now, I'm not a tax advisor. Those guys are all busy right now trying to prepare for April 15th tax deadline. But these tips so they're not meant to be a replacement for real life advice. So be sure to do talk to your tax advisor, your legal advisor, and your accounting professional so they can help you with your specifics of your situation. I mean, some of the very obvious things, you want to make sure that you're avoiding late fees and underpayment penalties by filing by the deadlines, of course. Pay your taxes that are owed on time. And for some people, that may mean paying quarterly estimated taxes. Don't overlook that income from your side hustle. Income needs to be claimed even if you aren't getting a 1099 or W-2 for it. For example, a lot of people this past year have been receiving unemployment compensation. That needs to be claimed as income. Sometimes hobbies will earn some income, even though they may not be very profitable. And really all of that should be declared as income. Not all money you receive, though, is considered taxable. For example, if you get a gift of funds from a family member, as long as it's under the gift tax limit, which is currently $15,000 per person per year, that's not going to count as income. Making sure you elect the correct filing status is also important. Whether you're electing single, married filing jointly, married filing separately, head of household, widow with dependent child, those are all going to make a difference in kind of the outcome of how those taxes play out, but just making sure that you're electing the correct filing status for your situation. A really common mistake that we see a lot is incorrectly claiming dependents. And it can get complicated when parents are divorced, things like that, because only one taxpayer at a time can claim a dependent. Everybody wants to claim their plants and their cats and that kind of thing. You can only claim your kids who are under the age of 19, or if they're under 24 and a full-time student, you also may be able to claim them as long as they're living with you at least 6 months of the year. Now, there's a new tax credit that I'm going to just put on your radar for other dependents, and this may actually apply to some of you because this past year with the challenging economic conditions, some of you may have taken in a parent or another qualifying relative in addition to your dependent children. So if you do have other dependents, make sure you look into that additional credit that is available this year. The only thing I would note is that you can't double claim your dependent child. You can't claim this new credit and the child care credit. So just be sure to keep that on your radar as well. Something else that may be bad news for some of you is that if you were planning on claiming that home office, we're all sitting at home on Zoom these days, you probably can't deduct that from your income taxes if you're getting a paycheck from somebody else. Now, if you're self-employed, you absolutely want to make sure that you're correctly claiming your home office expenses and all of those kind of things if you are self-employed. Another common mistake people make is not keeping good records. The rule of thumb is you really should be keeping your records for 7 to 10 years just to be safe. And that's going to include things like receipts, keeping track of mileage if you use your vehicle for work, even these life events like getting married or adopting a child, getting divorced, custody arrangements for children. All of that's going to be important when you're claiming dependents and things like that on your taxes. Medical expenses is another one. I mean, you have to be spending quite a bit on medical costs to have that be something that's deductible, but certainly keeping good records is important there as well. I would also say, and this is maybe more year-round, not just at tax time, but remain mindful of income taxes when choosing how you're going to save to reach some of these goals. Be aware of income limits that might make you ineligible to be able to contribute to a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA. It's always good to keep in mind what tax bracket you're in also, because paying taxes on whatever that interest is that you're earning, it isn't much these days in the bank accounts. But you know, when you have to pay taxes on that interest versus choosing a vehicle that maybe you get tax-free interest, that's going to make a big difference in how much you get to keep in the long run. Recognize that contributing to an employer's retirement plan is not necessarily going to reduce your take-home pay dollar for dollar. So, for example, like if you earn $1,000 in income and you don't contribute to a retirement plan, you're paying income taxes on that whole $1,000 of earnings. But if you're contributing, say, 10% or $100 of that $1,000 to a retirement plan, you know, not only are you saving for your future, but you're only paying income taxes on $900 of that earnings then. So a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that your take-home pay, you know, is going to be affected dollar for dollar. It's going to be reduced. And that's not usually the case because of the way that that works out with the taxable income. So definitely I would encourage you to look at enrolling in your employer retirement plan if you aren't already, especially if they offer a match, because that's going to be a good way to reduce your current year's taxable income as well as save for the future. Now, if you're saving for college and you're opting for a 529 college savings plan, I would advise you to look at which state sponsors that plan before you invest in it. Because you are able to get a state income tax break well, like in Colorado, we pay state income taxes, but that means you need to contribute to one of the Colorado 529 savings plans. So that's something I see people sometimes will choose a 529 based on what investment options are in there, but if it's not sponsored by their home state, then you're not going to be eligible for that state income tax break. Also, being aware of the IRS rules on required distributions from your savings. When you get older, and it used to be age 70 and a half, you were required to take out a minimum amount each year from your retirement accounts. They've increased that age now to 72. So if you're not already taking those required minimum distributions, now you can wait until you're age 72. But if you aren't taking out the appropriate amount and paying taxes on that each year, there's an IRS penalty of, get this, 50% on the amount you should have taken out. So make sure that you are aware of that and keep on track. And probably whoever you're saving with will help you keep track of that as well. But the IRS wants their taxes at some point. So make sure you're aware of that and plan, you know, kind of long-term planning for that as well. Now, if you inherit a retirement account and it's a traditional IRA, one that's pre-tax, they've also recently changed the rules around that. You used to be able to kind of stretch that out over your lifetime the way you would with your own retirement account, but now they're requiring you to distribute that within 10 years. So you can do it a little bit at a time each year, or you can do it all in a single year. But obviously that's going to affect your income taxes depending on how you plan to distribute that. The way things currently stand, you're probably not going to have to worry about paying estate taxes unless your estate is valued in the multi-millions. That could always change though. But if you do inherit non-retirement assets, so something that's outside of like an IRA or 401k, I would just say to make sure that you take advantage of a step up in basis, because whenever someone invests in really anything, the amount that you invested and then the amount that it grows, when you sell it, you've got to pay taxes on the difference on that gain. But when someone passes away and you inherit an asset, you can value that asset as of the date of death. That way, when you sell that asset, you're not having to pay as much, you're minimizing the capital gains. So if you just think about, like, you don't want to have to use the original amount that was invested by your great grandpa, 80 years ago or something like that. So that's something that sometimes you have that responsibility to either request the step up in basis from the brokerage firm or somehow figure that out with your tax professional. But that's going to make a big difference if you're selling that asset. However, and I think you guys will like this because a little help can benefit from this next tip. If you take some time to do some tax planning, especially with things like gifting to charity, like if you are gifting some funds or assets to a little help or other charity, many people now are not able to itemize their deductions anymore because they raised the standard deduction a couple years ago, and now it's at a level where even with mortgage interest and some of those other expenses, a lot of people are not able to itemize and get that extra tax benefit from donating to charity. But there's still some strategies that you can use to be more tax efficient in your charitable giving. So that's good news both for the charity and for you. Nobody wants to pay more than their fair share on taxes. One thing you can do is donate appreciated assets. So if you bought some stock or really anything at a very low cost and it's grown in value so much that you're afraid to sell it because of how much capital gains taxes you might owe on that, if you donate that asset directly to the charity, then you're avoiding having to pay those capital gains. So that could be a good strategy. If you're already taking your required minimum distributions, if you are over that age, 70 and a half, you could also, there's a kind of a newish rule about qualified charitable distributions, so that instead of taking money out of your IRA, paying the income taxes, and then writing a check to charity, what they allow you to do is have that money sent directly from your retirement account to the qualified charity. And then you avoid paying any income taxes on that. So even though you can't, do itemized deductions, that's still a more tax efficient way to deal with that. Lastly, I would also say another way you could maybe take advantage of some of these tax tips in your charitable giving is if you aren't able to itemize, consider maybe if you've been used to giving some each year, consider kind of front loading that charitable giving into a single tax year. There's donor advised funds that let you make the entire donation in a single year, get the entire deduction on that whole amount. So you're claiming all of those funds that are donated, and you can actually donate your highly appreciated assets too to avoid the capital gains. And then, so you get the deduction in that single year, which helps you get over that standard deduction. And then going forward, you distribute the funds to the charities of your choice in future years. And so there's a lot of ways that you can, taxes are what they are. You can't really avoid paying them, but there are some strategies that you can use if you do talk to your financial advisor and your tax professional that can hopefully let you keep more of what you earn and pass along more of what you'd like to your charities or your loved ones. Thanks, Jason. I think that's all my time for today.
Well, that's wonderful. That's so much good information, Kathy. Thanks for sharing. There were a couple of questions that came up, and I neglected to say this at the top. But if you do have questions, we've got two means. There's a chat box at the bottom. You can throw some questions in the chat. There's also a Q&A function that we can read from. And while you were talking, Kathy, a couple questions did come in. The first one says, hot off the press. I understand that tax day has been extended to May 15th. What do you know about that? That's from Brenda.
Hot off the press. Well, that would be news to me. That may be true. I know they did that last year. I would say go to irs.gov, irs.gov. That's where you're going to get all of the latest up-to-date information on those deadlines.
All right, great. I might Google that while Ashley is speaking here. There's another question. Second question we got. Ask the question: if we were previously claiming home office expenses while getting a salary, as opposed to not self-employed, is that a new law, or is the law changed that the home office expenses cannot be deducted now?
That's a good question for your tax advisor. I just know that there's, this last year, so many people have been displaced from their offices, and in a lot of situations, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to claim the work from home space that you have. If you had been claiming it in the past, that may be, you may be in a situation where that will continue to apply to you. It's one of those things where you really should look kind of at the rules around that, or consult with your tax advisor, and just be careful, because you don't want to, get audited or something over something like that.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to be audited. And to be clear, we're not advising on taxes here. We're giving some overview. And I think the next question that popped in may fall in that same category. The question is, should we have Social Security taken out from our taxes, or our monthly checks? Take out taxes from our monthly check.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're self-employed, you do. You have to pay those self-employment taxes. If you're employed by someone else, they should be paying those. So yeah, that should be happening for everybody. And a lot of it's going to depend on if you're considered a sole proprietor, or if you're an S corporation, that kind of thing, how all of that works. But yeah, usually your employer is the one that handles all of that.
Yeah, and I know my wife is a pastor, and that involves a whole other schema of tax considerations and processes and things. And as that chief, for Social Security purposes, she's considered self-employed. Mm-hmm. So we do that on a kind of quarterly basis, just paying it. It doesn't come out of the paycheck specifically. There are a couple of questions. I'm going to hold those until the end, when we can all kind of bounce ideas off each other. Okay. At the end, we can all come back in. So be patient. But yes, do throw your questions, either the chat or the Q&A, and we'll come back to them after Bo speaks. Bo will be our third speaker. Our next speaker, thank you, Kathy. I'm just going to turn your microphone or your camera off for a minute. Our next speaker is Ashley Lease, who I met just about a month ago, and it's been wonderful to get to know you. Ashley's actually a Little Help volunteer as well, and works for Blue Federal Credit Union. Something else I didn't mention at the top of the event is that Ashley was also able to provide from Blue Credit Union a gift card, a $50 gift card, that we will be choosing somebody at random. You'll get to come back on, Ashley, and choose somebody kind of at random from whoever is on the call, and we'll be sending that out in the next few days. So, Ashley, I think I'm just going to turn my microphone off and let you go.
Sounds good.
Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jason mentioned, my name is Ashley. I'm with Blue Federal Credit Union. Blue's been in business for nearly 70 years, and as a local credit union, we're dedicated to helping our members discover pathways to realize their possibilities. Today, I have the pleasure of discussing principles for preserving wealth. And wealth management, or at the very least, protection against wealth erosion, is critical to the success of a wealth management plan. So when developing a wealth management plan, there's really 3 additional tools that I strongly suggest you develop for yourself. And that includes an investing plan, a financial plan, and an estate plan. So an investing plan considers your goals, your risk tolerance, the kinds of investments you want to make, and how you balance your portfolio or the group of investments that you own. Financial planning means creating a long-term vision and clear goals for the financial future you want. It means looking at the major pieces of your financial world, could be your job or your business, your retirement funds, your spending plan, any major assets you own, and the debt you owe as well. All of those add into the complete picture. Real estate, insurance, and investments are part of it too. Creating a financial plan helps you see what you're trying to achieve and how all those parts fit together to help you achieve your goals. An estate plan tells everyone how you want your property to be managed and who you want to inherit it when you pass. It's really important in case you become totally disabled before you die. Wills and trusts are included in an estate plan. So creating an estate plan can help you define your legacy, the gifts you'd like to make during your life and afterward to make a positive impact on your community. If you don't create an estate plan, the money you leave behind might have fees and carry taxes, and then the state will control the distribution of your estate rather than your heirs. Instead of leaving your family with a sense of security, you may be leaving them confused, frustrated, or at odds with one another. When developing these plans, documentation can really help you pursue your estate management goals. Such documents serving as advance directives can be very beneficial, including a living will, power of attorney, and durable power of attorney. Despite these benefits, many Americans don't have these documents in place. A living will provides specific instructions about your medical care. A power of attorney or POA authorizes someone to handle legal and financial decisions. And a durable POA authorizes someone to make health decisions on your behalf. A will is essentially the cornerstone of your estate. It can name executors, name guardians for minor children, and directs how your property is to be distributed. In regards to financial documents, we strongly encourage individuals to consider adding joint ownership to their documents, as well as durable power of attorney and a living will. Managing factors within your control can really impact your wealth, such as spending and saving, and preparing yourself for factors you can't control, such as down markets and changes in financial policy, are essential when thinking about how to hold and invest your wealth. Sorry, guys. Oh. So whether your goal is to enjoy your wealth during your lifetime, create a lasting legacy for your family members, engage in philanthropy, or all of the above, there are multiple factors that can affect whether you have sufficient assets to achieve your goals. Monitoring spending is a critical factor in preserving your wealth, in particular because your spending is within your control. Monitoring your spending is an easy way to identify discretionary spending that can be curtailed if necessary. Your spending habits and rate of savings can also impact your ability to retire. A low current spending rate coupled with a high current savings rate could provide for sufficient future income to allow you to retire earlier than anticipated, or even grow funds that help you enjoy retirement. I encourage you all to shop around and find the best rates for your deposits so your hard money is working hard, just as hard for you. Diversifying your portfolio, which I'm sure Bo will talk about here in a little bit as well, can really help ensure that your wealth is positioned well to bear the brunt of forces beyond your control, such as market instability and changes in tax policies. A trusted financial advisor can really provide a holistic view of your portfolio with an eye for long-term to help set you on the path to live the life you want to live and leave the legacy you want to leave. To protect your wealth, you really need to ensure that you're managing day-to-day and long-term risk. So to help manage short-term risk, building an emergency fund to cover 3 or 6 months of your family's expenses in case the unexpected happens, which we all know it most likely will. Tapping your retirement dollars for emergencies can be extremely costly and could derail your future retirement. Another risk to your wealth is investment risk. Investing too aggressively or failing to diversify can expose your portfolio to unnecessary volatility. In addition, moving all of your dollars at one time can be dangerous to your investment account. Making incremental changes over a longer period of time can help protect your portfolio from the large-scale risk of the move. Finally, make sure that you're adequately insured against risk. Protect your property through home, auto, and if appropriate, an umbrella policy, which encompasses all of them. Consider purchasing adequate life and disability insurance to protect your dependents from lost income, and don't allow your health insurance needs to be put on the back burner, or your wealth could be devastated by a medical emergency. In addition, you may want to think about purchasing long-term care insurance to protect your estate against the ever-rising cost of home health care or an extended nursing home stay. So in closing, there are some strategies to help you preserve your wealth. As I mentioned, preparing a will can be really beneficial. Be sure it keeps pace with changes in your personal circumstances and adjustments in tax laws. Marriage, divorce, birth, moving to another state, or even changes in your finances should signal a possible need for a revision of your will. Titling assets and holding property in joint ownership with the right survivorship is a simple way to avoid probate. The probate process can increase your state administration expenses, delay the execution of your wishes, and subject your affairs to unwanted publicity. Prepare for your medical expenses by ensuring you have adequate insurance and a plan for managing your assets if you or a family member becomes seriously ill or disabled, and be sure that you're including all of those necessary documents I mentioned earlier. Consider longevity. Increase your savings so you can live comfortably in your 80s or 90s or maybe even beyond. And then, of course, managing your portfolio. Work with a trusted financial advisor to ensure you have a variety of asset types. This can really help reduce the impacts of high inflation and market declines on your investments. And then know what you have and where you have it. So be sure that you're keeping documents of all those important papers, like Kathy had mentioned with your taxes, and make sure that those appropriate parties know where those papers are kept. And last but not least, be sure that you're meeting with the experts. Discuss your estate planning objectives, concerns, and fears with your financial consultant, as well as your tax and legal advisors, so that you can all develop a plan for effectively transferring wealth to your heirs. And thank you guys for your time today. My contact's on the screen, so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ashley. That was a lot of good information. And if you do have questions and want to throw them in the chat, we will come back around. But thanks so much. We'll see you in just a minute. Bo, good afternoon. I almost said good morning, but good afternoon. Folks, thank you for continuing on as part of this. Bo Smith is a financial advisor at Edward Jones. He's down in Denver. And we talked about this a while ago, and Bo was excited to jump on and be part and share a little bit about that legacy planning for what happens next. And Bo, I will turn it over to you. I think you're muted, Bo.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the introduction. My part of the call today is going to be centered around estate planning. And a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about, Ashley hit on a little bit, so I'll try to fill in the blanks there. I'm going to share my screen here. And the first thing we'll start with today is account registrations. I think I can safely assume that most people on the call today own some type of a bank account, a retirement account, insurance policy, pension, in addition to any personal property you may have, like a car, a home, a boat, things of that nature. At the same time, most of you probably are unaware of where the paperwork is for most of these assets. So it's important that you make sure that you've registered any of your accounts or personal property so that you know who they'll pass to when you do pass away. Make sure that all of these accounts are registered correctly in a manner consistent with what your plan is. This includes making sure that you've listed the correct people as owners of each account, and also making sure that the names are spelled correctly. So if you do have a living trust as well, it's worth noting, generally you should register the accounts in the name of the trust. So that's account registration. Next, we'll look at beneficiary designations. So and also, I would say as well, before we move on from account registrations, the reason that I even felt it was worth the time to bring up something like account registrations is if they're not up to date, your accounts could end up going to the wrong person, somebody like a former spouse, or just in general, somebody who's unintended. So I would also say to make sure that your assets are efficiently and effectively passed on to your loved ones, it might be worth considering consolidating them into one convenient place. I know especially for beneficiaries, it can be quite the headache when they're trying to get control of maybe their parents' assets. I've seen multiple times where people have been unhelpful or been unable to even completely understand where all of their parents' assets are located. So something to consider there. Moving on to beneficiary designations. Well, obviously beneficiary designations are extremely important. Assets that designate a beneficiary, things like IRAs, 401ks, life insurance policies, these are all generally going to pass automatically to whoever the listed beneficiary is, regardless of whatever a will or a trust may say. So, obviously it's going to be important to make sure that you have your beneficiaries listed correctly on your accounts. Make sure that any life insurance policies are relevant financial accounts, especially ones that were started a long time ago, have current beneficiaries listed with correct names and social security numbers. Moving on here, the next thing we're going to look at is wills. So, and Ashley talked a lot about this, so I'm going to try to be brief here. But in general, when you think about the idea of what is a will, well, there are several estate planning documents and tools that you can use to accomplish different goals, both during your life and after death. The first of those documents being the will. And generally, a will is a legal document that's going to govern the division and distribution of your assets after you pass away. And really, to put it simply, it's going to be determined. It's going to be what determines who gets what when you do die. So, what happens, by the way, if you don't have a will when you pass away? Well, if you don't have a will, all of those assets that don't have beneficiary designations will pass by what's called intestacy. This means that basically assets are going to be distributed according to the laws of your state, regardless of whatever your wishes may have been. So that being said, the probate of these assets, when there is a will, is something called a testate probate estate. So within a will, you're going to have to name an executor. And wills also serve another important purpose. A will is where you're going to indicate a guardian if you do have dependents. So if you have minor children or children with special needs, you'll probably want to name a guardian for them within the will. And also, as you set up the will, once again, one of the first things that you'll need to do is name an executor of your will, and also designate a trustee if your will establishes a trust. So the executor is going to be the person who's going to carry out your wishes. You can name whoever you like. This may be a spouse, it may be an adult child, it may be a friend, it may be an attorney. You can even designate a corporate executor, such as a bank or a trust company. Working with the courts, banks, insurance companies, and other family members, the executor is going to establish the validity of the will, collecting the breadth of assets owned in your estate, file tax returns, and distribute your assets to the specific beneficiaries. So with all that responsibility, it's really important that when you're choosing an executor, you name somebody that you definitely trust. Next up, looking at probate. What is probate? Well, when you die, your will and your assets go through the probate process. The first step of which is called proving up the will. During this part of the process, the executor, typically working with an attorney, presents the will to a judge to determine its validity. Once the judge determines the validity of the will, they'll order the will, what's called admitted to probate. And after a judge probates the will, they'll sign a court order granting the power to the executor to collect and manage your assets and distribute your property to your beneficiaries after creditors and taxes are paid. So it's also worth noting, guys, that during the probate proceedings, probate proceedings and the documents filed with the court as part of those proceedings are public record. This means that anybody may be able to look up a copy of your will, the inventory of assets included in your estate, the estate's worth, and also the names of anybody who's received your assets. So maybe a privacy consideration when setting up a will. What are some other additional important documents besides just the will? And once again, Ashley hit on some of these. Some of the main ones I would point your attention to would be the durable power of attorney. A power of attorney is going to enable you to identify and empower somebody to make financial decisions on your behalf. while you're still living if you've become incapacitated. In addition to that, a healthcare power of attorney is basically going to do the same thing, but it's going to allow somebody to make healthcare decisions rather than financial decisions, which is what a durable power of attorney would cover. And then also, once again, Ashley did talk about this a little bit, but you have the living will document, which lets you legally indicate what your wishes are with respect to life prolonging procedures in the case that you are unable to clearly communicate them yourself. So those are wills. The next part that we'll talk about here is trusts. So what is a trust? A trust is a legal arrangement that allows assets to be transferred into the trust and then managed by a trustee on behalf of the trust beneficiaries. What are some of the things that a trust can do? Well, trusts are used for a variety of reasons. Some of the most common of those reasons being to provide for a child with special needs, maybe restrict or control inheritances for loved ones, and also in some cases helping to reduce estate taxes. So some of the most common ways that we can utilize a trust. When you set up a trust, you're going to have to name a trustee, and some of the roles of a trustee are going to include implementing an investment strategy for the assets, maybe record keeping and providing accounting for beneficiaries, paying trust expenses, and also making sure that funds are distributed to the beneficiaries according to the terms of the trust. When establishing a trust, it's worth noting that you can appoint a family member, a friend, or a professional to act as trustee. For some types of trusts, which I'll cover here in a second, you yourself can even act as trustee during your lifetime. So what are some things, speaking of trustees, that you should consider when you're in the position of naming one? Well, first of all, a trustee should be experienced in managing financial affairs. They should be fair and unbiased, and they should also be willing to devote a significant amount of time and energy. So sometimes when naming a trustee, if you decide to name a family member or friend, that may cause friction within the family. The reason is a trustee oftentimes is going to have to make difficult decisions according to the terms of the trust, and this may cause tension amongst the beneficiaries. If you think that there's a situation like that, you may consider just naming a professional trustee, such as a trust company, to fill that role to hopefully avoid some of that friction. The next thing I want to cover is two of the most common types of trusts. Now, there's multiple different types of trusts, but for the sake of time today, I'm just going to talk about the two most common types. The first of those being what's called a revocable living trust, or sometimes known as a grantor trust. Now, it's in the name, revocable living trust. This is the type of trust that's created while you're alive, and it can be revoked or changed at any time while you're still living or mentally competent. So with this type of trust, you yourself are the creator, grantor of the trust, and you're usually going to be acting as the trustee as well during the course of your life. Some of the benefits of a trust like this, it's extremely beneficial, first of all, if you become incapacitated and you decide that you need help with your financial affairs. The reason being is that the person that you've named as successor trustee within this trust is going to be able to step in and manage your finances regardless of whether or not the courts have officially declared that you're mentally incapacitated and they've officially appointed you a guardian or a conservator. Having a trust like this set up would help avoid that necessary process of happening to help a successor trustee and come make some of those financial decisions. Another big benefit of the revocable living trust is the fact that upon your death, the assets within the trust are going to pass directly to those that you've named without going through the public process of probate, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. So there's a level of privacy that you would otherwise have to, or that you're avoiding, that you would otherwise have to go through with a will. And then finally, I'll wrap up with this. The second type of trust that I wanted to talk about is the testamentary trust. This type of trust becomes effective at your death, and generally the terms within the testamentary trust could be the same as those that are created underneath a revocable living trust. The main difference, though, between a revocable living trust and a testamentary trust is that the testamentary trust will generally be subject to the probate process, meaning that it's going to go through the court system and it's going to be of public record. So I want to wrap up with that and let Jason take back over here. Of course, I'd be happy to answer any additional estate planning questions that may arise. So.
Yeah, and maybe this is a good place. Thank you, Bo. That was a lot of information in a short period of time. So, also, folks, all of this we're recording this webinar right now, this little talk, and it'll be put up on our website, and everybody's contact information. And if we need to do, if you have more questions, we can ask them now. But we'll put up more information on this and this talk itself on our website. If you saw in the chat box, Kathy has been adding a few things in there. Thank you for that. And I think at this point, I'm going to ask everyone to turn their cameras back on for a few minutes and answer some of these questions that have been coming in. We have quite a few. Thank you all for doing this. I think the first question to ask, and we'll throw it up to whoever wants to ask, how do we find a tax advisor? How simple is that, or any advice on going about doing that?
I always think it's a great idea to ask, well, if you have a financial advisor or maybe someone like Ashley at your credit union that helps you with any kind of wealth management, a lot of times those trusted people that you already work with will have kind of a circle of those people that they can introduce you to. If you don't already work with really anybody in that realm, I always think just asking maybe coworkers, friends, family, other people you trust, hey, who do you use to prepare your taxes? And you know, sometimes it takes a while. Unfortunately, my tax person retired a couple years ago, so I'm kind of still going through that process of finding someone I feel like I can have a good partnership with.
Yeah, and it really is a partnership, isn't it? Thanks for that advice. Another question that came up is involves itemizing or standard deductions with donations to a charity or nonprofit, like a Little Help. Or if we make a donation, does that get itemized? Is it now a standard deduction? And that may fall into this referral back to a tax advisor, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is so they increased the standard deduction. So it's now, if you add up all your itemized deductions, a lot of people are finding that total is less than what the standard is. So it's not that you're not getting the tax break that you always got for making those charitable donations. It's just you're not getting any additional tax benefit than you would if you weren't doing any of those things, because if that makes sense. If you can itemize your deductions and get up over that standard, that's when you start to get additional tax benefit, which is why I think it's worth doing a little planning around that if you can.
Yeah. Planning is key. That's what I keep hearing through this talk. Planning and thinking ahead. A lot of good questions. I'm going to pepper you with another one. Which, here's a good one. Do you suggest getting a fireproof or waterproof safe to keep documents in?
Yes. Yeah. And I just talked about that a little bit at the beginning of the call with the account registration, right? You want your will, for example, that's a document that your loved ones are going to have to track down. And it's best that they know where it is.
Yeah, if you have that, I think it's a good idea. And everybody is nodding their heads yes. The next one is really simple question. Somebody asked for Ashley if you could put your contact information in the chat. Somebody's going to circle back around with you. Here's a question that says, if we are retired, it says we are retired, so wondering if we should withhold taxes from Social Security, being retired.
I get that question a lot. I think you might want to consider, are you owing taxes come tax season, right? So if you find that, or are you getting a refund, right? That may dictate your behavior as far as having taxes withheld. One thing a lot of people don't realize with Social Security is it's not technically taxable income until you're reporting certain levels of other income, or what's known as provisional income, right? So depending on your current situation, you may not have a particularly taxable year, Or, on the flip side, you may be owing taxes. And in that scenario, if you're finding that you're having to pay out of pocket and you wouldn't otherwise like to, maybe you should be withholding a certain level.
Wow, thank you. That's why we have pros. Kathy is answering one more question that's in the Q&A. And the last question that I've got came in by email earlier this week. And Bo and I kind of talked about it. I sent it over, and the question is, I'll read it a little bit. We are recently retired, and all of our savings are in our traditional IRAs. We're getting bombarded for ads from financial professionals saying to take most of our money out and put it in fixed annuities.
Oh.
Yeah. Is this sound advice? Is the first.
I would caution anyone about getting, bombarded with any kind of marketing or those kind of, yeah, just be careful. I would definitely, one of the websites that I listed, the letsmakeaplan.org, has some really good resources for consumers to kind of have a list of questions you should be asking, because anytime someone is, trying, I don't know. I always am suspicious if people are leading with a product rather than, and I'm sure Bo and Ashley can both agree with that, rather than asking you, what are your goals? What's important to you? And, trying to find out a little bit more about, are you trying to protect the principal of this money, or are you just trying to generate an income from it? Or, without asking those questions, you can't advise someone to put their money into any particular product. And so I'd be very, very cautious about that. I don't know if Bo or Ashley want to add to that, but I just, extreme caution, and it's fair to ask any kind of professional that's helping you with that sort of stuff, like how they get paid, what are their credentials, why are they recommending this particular product? Because a lot of times people, anybody can go by the title financial advisor, and you just got to kind of find out, are they captive to a single insurance agency, or do they truly, are they able to offer, a wealth of different options to you, or are they just kind of trying to sell you this one insurance product? I just would, caution.
Yeah, I would just quickly piggyback on what Kathy just said. Kathy, you basically took the words out of my mouth. I would emphasize, anytime somebody's leading with an investment product, a good financial advisor or financial planner is somebody who thoroughly understands what your current financial picture is, and they're tailoring a long-term personalized strategy based on what your goals are. And in general, as far as annuities goes, if you want to really simplify, what are the pros and cons of an annuity? I guess the main pro, especially of a fixed annuity, is that you're going to have a guaranteed rate of return regardless of what the stock market's doing. But some of the two big cons are going to be, generally speaking, they're higher cost products compared to something like a mutual fund or an index fund. And also, there's a problem with lack of liquidity, right? At the end of the day, an annuity is a contract with an insurance company, and they're going to charge you very high surrender fees if you need to get out of that contract before a certain time frame has elapsed. So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, thank you all. That is about all of the questions that we have, and the fella that just popped in with the necktie on, which is wonderful. I feel underdressed now. Jake Dresden is a Little Help's Director of Outreach and Development, and has a few words just about a new program that we're launching that kind of ties in with this whole theme. I'm going to let Jake speak for a little bit, and then we'll come back with Ashley for the drawing of the gift card and a little music. So with that, Jake, what do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to all the expert presenters that came before me for all of their financial advice and counsel. I think it's extremely helpful to our audience and timely, obviously with tax deadline coming up very quickly. Speaking of planned giving, I think Bo teed me up pretty well. But if you have not heard, A Little Help is very excited to launch our own version of a planned giving program here in 2021. I'll just back up and say, we are grateful to all of our donors over the past 15 years that have supported us with our annual giving program, and we hope that you will continue to do that. But we felt the time was right for us to have a planned giving program to sustain a little help in perpetuity and provide for future generations so they can enjoy all the benefits that a little help has to offer. As you can see on the slide that Jason just pulled up, we are now prepared to accept gifts in the form of obviously cash always to the endowment fund, wills and trusts, which we just discussed, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, property in the form of real estate or different vehicles that you might own, and then life insurance and retirement plans. Those are all things that some of us and many of us do own. And if those are things that you would like to pass on to our wonderful organization, please reach out to myself or Hillary Lenz, our executive director, and Jason will share our contact information in a second. But we will be sending out more detailed information in the mail in coming months, a mailer and a brochure. But if you are excited and you want to get cranking on this ahead of time, please reach out to us. Always speak to a financial advisor if you have one, or an estate planner for a little guidance as well. So that's it from me. Yeah, my tie was in homage to St. Patrick's Day, so a little green here. So I think we have some music coming up. Thank you all.
That's right. Thank you, Jake.
You're welcome.
One last thing before we get to the music, before we get to the super fun part, Ashley, if you could jump back on. And Ashley has a blinded and a fairly anonymous list of who's on the call still. Can you pull that up? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
All right. So we are never done this before in a little talk. Thank you so much, Ashley and Blue Credit Union for bringing a $50 gift card that'll be given out to somebody.
That's right. Yeah, we're excited.
Random drawing, and tell me who we're sending that to.
I have the name Shirley O'Brien. Congratulations, Shirley.
Shirley O'Brien. Congratulations, and we will get that out. Shirley O'Brien, thank you. Congratulations. We will send that out just in the next day or two. And thanks for that. Thanks, everybody. This has been a tremendous day and so timely. Just to think about these things. And if you do have any more questions, I put my email in the chat. It's just Jason@a-little-help. And I will now turn this over on an outro. There's a group. It's actually a nonprofit up here in Fort Collins called Sound Affect. And they specifically put together performing live music for different events, for different nonprofits, for folks working with older adults. So they are doing now, over the past year, they've been doing a lot more remote and virtual. And so I called Hannah, who's their program director over there, and tried to get some music for today. And she said, well, it's St. Patrick's Day, so all the Celtic bands are kind of booked. But we did get a group to put together a recording for us. So as we go out today, let's go out joyfully. Let's go out singing. If we can't see you on the other end of the camera. So if they get going on the fiddle and the guitar and you want to get up and dance around, get up and dance around. Thank you for being here.
For St. Patrick's Day, this is Once Upon a Tune, and 1, 2, 3, Happy St. Patrick's Day! 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, here we are. We're putting on a